he kicks in the law from there. He kicks in the process from there.
Very correct.
So these are two different processes that
what you have said further buttress the point we are making. Dividing distinct, try to divide the misconduct and then crime, and how that crime must be prosecuted by the state promptly. But you see, let me digress to say this. You see, we are when conversation like that comes up about judiciary and corruption in the judiciary, the impression people have as if the judiciary is sitting somewhere dormant and we are coming to fight, to fight corruption in the judiciary. Do you know that the judiciary is in the forefront of the fight against corruption? Do you know that the NJC have been suspending judges, putting judges on watch lists, dismissing judges, removing their clothes promptly when petition comes?
Even without petitions.
Even without. And do you also know that the Chief Justice of Nigeria set up a committee called Anti-Corruption Trial Monitoring Committee as a proactive step in fighting corruption? So I don't know where people are coming from outside to speak for NJC that is in the forefront of the fight, as if the NJC is not doing anything and somebody is coming to invade them. That is why I believe that this matter should be tested at the Supreme Court. Let's have a go at what the Supreme Court would view in the light of distinguishing between misconduct and crime. When a judge appears in the door, he's not there as a judge. If he has to be there as a judge, then it will be the state versus NJC or the state versus the judiciary. He is there as a defendant. That is the rule of law. In his personal capacity, as a person,
his office.
For abusing his office.
The lead judgment of Justice, what's his name now? Where's the judgment? Sorry. Justice Osaruge Obaseki Adejumo.
Right.
Makes reference to 3 documents. This one, that's the National Judicial Discipline Regulations, right. The National Judicial Council revised NJC guidelines on procedural rules for the appointments and judicial officers and all superior courts, as well as the one on judicial policy, the National Judicial Policy. Right. The judgment made reference to it. I went to look for these 3 documents again. Right. This one is very apt. That's right. The Judicial Discipline Regulations. The NJC here says the time limit within which a complaint must be made. In other words, NJC acts only on complaints of misdemeanor and all of that against judicial officers. A complaint must be made within 6 months of the event or matter complained of, provided that a complaint relating to a continuing state of affairs may be made at any time while that state of affairs continues or within 6 months from where it ends.
Right.
Does this take on board the process for prosecuting crime?
Because
from arrest to prosecution.
Yes, because in criminal law, that's another point. Thank you even for adding. That's another point. In criminal law, there is no statute of limitation. You cannot say this is the time within which if a crime is not brought.
So if the judge collected the bribe last year, and you are just knowing now, this rule precludes you from complaining to the agency
about that. So you see, that's the argument. That is why we hold the view and strongly that it is administrative powers, control, and discipline that the NJC has over that judge. For example, they can't sentence a judge for a crime. They can't sentence a judge for any crime because sitting there as NJC, even though they are judges, they do not have that criminal jurisdiction. So it is clear now. Stretch the argument further. You just talked about time limit within which
there are so many of them. The next one to it is subject to Regulation 5. A complaint made outside the time limit set in paragraph 1, that's the one I just read now, must be dismissed. A complaint made outside of that time must be dismissed by the council upon report to the council by the secretary to the council.
You see, what law enforcement agencies cannot do, EFCC cannot arrest a judge for delivering a judgment that in their opinion is perverse. They cannot arrest a judge for giving a ruling outside of the period or judgment outside of the period required by him. They cannot arrest a judge because, like the way Onu said, he was dancing somewhere in a party. Or they cannot arrest a judge because he was somewhere shouting. Because these are matters of ethics contained in the code for
as
judicial
a judicial officer.
As a judicial officer. It's
just not as a citizen.
Just like in pastorate. If a pastor is seen in the public behaving in a manner that is unbecoming of a pastor, the church would discipline him only insofar as it relates to his
As a
conduct
pastor.
as a pastor.
Yes.
Once it is a crime, it is the state. That's why in even, part of the conditions when you come to court, they look at jurisdiction of the court. For example, if you're looking at party, the state versus so and so. And you see, people are complaining that what we are now having is that every arm of government is trying to create a quasi arm of the other government in there.
Yes.
So judiciary is trying to, people are saying, trying to create legislative department by way of this kind of decisions, and also the executive arm. Then the National Assembly, they are looking at this thing. Let me even tell you something, Mr. Benga. If this decision is sustained, all the judges presently being tried will have a ground to have all of their charges quashed.
Yes.
Because there is no proceedings and conclusion by NJC on them.
Before
And then it will also be unjust if you do that for judges, and then you leave the public officers whose misconducts are supposed to be tried by Code of Conduct Tribunal to be in courts. It means you move all the cases against politicians to Code of Conduct Tribunal.
Just to further buttress the point that the NJC has powers to deal with complaints only as it relates to official conduct of a judicial officer while performing his judicial function.
Yes.
I'm reading the rules further. Number 6 now, it says failure to comply with time limits.
Yes.
Where in the course of disciplinary proceedings, any person who fails to comply with the relevant time limit set by anyone empowered to so do, the person exercise the function to set time limit may, 1, he may continue to deal with the case. 2, treat representations made outside the time limit as if they have not been made.
Thank you.
In other words, no matter how valid or cogent the
complaint
is, like in this case, that a judge 2 years ago collected bribe, but because you didn't make the complaint within 6 months, you are making it now. As far as the agency is concerned, and as far as the rules of procedure for dealing with a judge is concerned, it never took place.
And these rules guide their proceedings.
There are laws that makes a crime limitless. The statute is not barred. A crime, there's no statute bar for a crime, right? If you commit a crime today and it takes the police or EFCC 50 years to investigate, if you're still alive, they'll prosecute you. If it takes them 10 years or 1 week, they'll prosecute you.
In some countries, they prosecute you even when you're dead.
Yes. Now